As Brad showed us, M&Ms are a good symbol for the diversity, for the culture in which we live, in which there is so much diversity, and the diversity we're called to embrace. And I want you to know that I am in favor of multicultural communities. I support diversity. I'm against banning books. I know what makes Jesus happy. And I like M&Ms, but to tell you the truth, they're not my favorite. Thank you. Maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but sometimes I find it very hard to live amidst people who are not like me. And I wonder if you too find it hard to live with people who are different. I want to share a struggle that I had long ago that challenged me on 3 fronts at once, reminding me that M&Ms are not my favorite. When Susan and I moved to Michigan many years ago, we intentionally bought a house in an ethnically, racially mixed neighborhood. I had a little self-righteousness about doing that. I was a really open person, and so I could do that. But I was only a few weeks before I felt like I was in another world. I listened to my neighbors, fellow English-speaking Americans, talking to one another in English, supposedly, and I could not understand a word they said. I felt alien. I observed the men congregating on the curbs and the porch steps, and it made me nervous. In the neighborhood that I had come from, men only congregated together for golf or barbecue. And any groups of men who were not in doing golf or barbecue meant danger. I felt alien in this neighborhood. I experienced a kind of culture shock, and I felt like a stranger in a strange land, and I was out of my comfort zone, and I did not like it. I'd known myself as gay for some years before we moved to Michigan, and I was out, so it was a shock for me to discover that in the predominantly gay church that I had come to serve, I felt like an outsider. Most of the folks in the church carried a lot of pain from having been rejected by family and church. My own experience was very different. And in order to minister to these people who are like me, but not like me, I had to find a whole new way of doing ministry. I experienced a kind of culture shock, and I felt like a stranger in a strange land, and I was out of my comfort zone, and I didn't like it. Susan and I had been in a relationship for years before this time, but we had never actually lived together. And so now we are moving in together. We brought our books and our toothbrushes and our very different economic class backgrounds. Now, I like to keep the freezer in my kitchen comfortably full, but not crowded, so I can find what's in there. I grew up knowing that if I was ever out of anything, I could just go to the store and pick it up. Susan, however, packs the freezer so full that when I want some frozen strawberries that are in the back corner, it takes 10 minutes of unpacking to get to them. Because she grew up sometimes hungry, it's her way of making sure there will be enough. I get that, but I still can't get to my strawberries. And I have sense enough to know that guests come to our house to be served fancy food and see if the house is clean. I didn't grow up middle class for nothing. Susan thinks guests come to see us, and she prefers to save her energy for when they're here and not be in a frazzled state before they get there. Isn't that a concept? Susan thinks I have more middle-class rules than Albertsons has M&Ms. Rules I didn't know I had until she breaks them. And she'd like me to consider letting go of a few of them. Not a chance. And I tell Susan that if she ever puts a lumpy upholstered chair with hanging out stuffing on our front porch, the marriage is over. In my own house, with my own beloved spouse, I experienced culture shock, and I felt like a stranger in a strange land. And I was way out of my comfort zone, and I didn't like it. Teachers of classes and writers of books and preachers of sermons tell us that we need to welcome diversity, and I agree. But all those years ago, when I was hit with this in-your-face trinity of prejudices and narrow comfort zones, when I had to face that I wasn't quite as cool as I thought I was, I had a very hard time getting my heart to where my head was. I wonder if it's hard for you, too. Do you, like me, sing the good peace and justice hymns with gusto, but in your heart of hearts, on some days, you think this radical welcome thing is not all it's cracked up to be? Maybe it's class issues for you. Maybe that's what pushes you out of your comfort zone. Or maybe you struggle with a subtle prejudice against people who are very rich or very poor, or people who smoke. Or is it Republicans that push your buttons? Many of us in the progressive faith communities are virtuously accepting of Muslims and Buddhists, but we don't find it so easy to make room for conservative Christians. After all, they're not only different, they're wrong, right? Philosopher Ken Wilber challenges people like me who, more than we like to admit, can judge people who make us uncomfortable. He says, compassion is the only judgment of which you are allowed, the only judgment which you are allowed, the only one. I think it's important to tell the truth about our lives, and living among diversity is hard. It's hard. You and I go to a multicultural event, a conference, or a worship service, and maybe it was pretty great, and everybody understood everybody and respected everybody's differences, and then you go home. It was very exciting at the conference, but when you live in the same neighborhood, or the same house, or go to the same church, it's not so easy. Then it's going to be hard work. It takes a little bit of courage and a whole lot of energy to really stay open to those who are different. Some days, I confess, I wish Jesus would just leave me alone. So what keeps me at it? What might help you to continue to be able to walk the talk? I've been thinking about that. I notice that sometimes Susan calls me on my prejudices, but usually she just loves me in spite of them. She makes it okay for me to be flawed. Because of that, I am now and then willing to stick at least my big toe outside of my comfort zone. I grow when I'm loved enough that it's okay to be flawed. And the churches I've served, especially you, the churches help. You remind me of certain standards. Love your neighbor, love your enemy. And in your midst, I remember what kind of person I want to be. You give me something to live up to. Perhaps you find that too. I know why Christianity is a community religion. They say you can't be a Christian by yourself. Christianity is inherently communal because we can't do this work alone. My faith helps, of course, but not just because of our Christian teachings. I don't always do the right thing just because I'm supposed to do the right thing. What gets me moving is that I am in a committed relationship with Spirit. And I do the right thing even when I'd much rather do the wrong thing, because long ago I vowed to be faithful to that commitment. I don't know if it's like that for you, but you might reflect on how your relationship with the Holy One empowers you to do what you think you can't do. It isn't easy to live in an M&M multicultural world. Let's tell the truth about that. But some things help me to live in diversity with some grace. When someone makes it okay for me to be flawed. When my community reminds me of the kind of person I want to be and helps me to lean into that. And when I am faithful to my relationship with the holy. Besides that, I know that our children are watching us, not only to learn how to do diversity, they're also watching us to learn how to do hard. And though I hate to admit it, I suspect that Spirit's favorite candy is M&Ms. So when we see a table on which we make a place for everyone, even for those people I wish hadn't been invited, I'll be there. I hope to see you. Let's join in unison prayer, which I think will show up here. Yes. Holy mystery, you call us to love. Love your neighbor, love self, love enemy. But it is very hard. If we are to answer your call to love, we need community to sustain us, Spirit to empower us, and you to immerse us in grace. God of many names, you call us to care for those in need, to care for friend, stranger, enemy. But it is very hard. If we are to answer your call to care, we need community to sustain us, Spirit to empower us, and you to immerse us in grace. May it be so. Hey, folks.